Well, hey, everybody. It's Saturday, and you know what that means. That means it's time for HT Pregame. I am your host, sports mental health empowerment coach, Dr. Lauren Pitts, and my ride or die co-host extraordinaire, Ronnie Ransom. I missed you.
I missed you too. How was the show last week? I got a chance to listen to a little bit of it.
Corinne rocked out. She rocked out. She brought that thing. She educated, empowered, and liberate folks about that money. I
really wish I could have been a part of that conversation, because it definitely sounded like it was a very good conversation. So if she comes back around next time, I'm definitely going to be a part of that.
Yeah, and I told her I left an open invitation for it, and it said, you know what, you are welcome here. You are part of the HT Pregame family now. Oh my goodness, it was just phenomenal having her on. So hopefully folks will reach out to her, because she's in the DC metropolitan area, right there in PG County, and just loving on folks. And, you know, she does a lot of work with athletes and scholar athletes too, trying to help them get that money right and keep that money right, so that they're staying wealthy, you know, for those that have already made it. So folk, don't forget to show Corinne Hamilton some love. That woman's golden. She knows what she's doing when it comes to that money and getting your credit right and keeping you right. So hopefully folks will reach out to her, and just, you know, reminding folks of the extraordinary knowledge that Mike Prophet shared with us during Financial Literacy Awareness too, reaching out to him at Mass Mutual, and really just giving folks an opportunity to take your knowledge to a whole nother level. Well, look, folks, oh my goodness. Ronnie and I were just talking before we went live about, it's been a crazy year. It's been a crazy week. Just a lot of stuff going on. And what we want you to know is, you know, for us here at Pregame, it's all about family. And we share this information. I wish I could do my Bernie Mac impersonation. It's all about family. It's all about family. You know, it really is. It's all about family. It's all about your family. It's all about our family. It's all about Black and brown families, because week after week, we have the hard conversations. We really, really do, on topics that are relevant to our Black and brown communities globally, including our HBCU families, scholar and professional athletes and their families, and our Heritage Sports Radio Network family. We absolutely love. We are humbled and honored and count it a joy that you join us week after week to get powerful, albeit raw. We know it's raw, albeit raw, life, sports, and mental health information that you need, that we all need to make well-informed athletic and life-transforming decisions. Also, do not forget that you can catch us on Heritage Sports Radio Network every Saturday at the same time. We compete against ourselves. How crazy is that? At 11 a.m. and at 10 p.m. on Saturday nights, and then again on Sundays at 6 p.m. We have a great show lined up for you today, Ronnie.
Thank you. And glad to be back, everybody. Good morning. What a wonderful Saturday it is today. Happy Mental Health Awareness Month to everybody. You know, this is, I kind of look at Mental Health Awareness Month, kind of like how I look at like Mother's Day and Father's Day and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not going to celebrate my mother on one day out the year. Just like I'm not going to celebrate my father one day out the year. I try to bring awareness to mental health every single day of the year, because mental health, you just can't condense mental health down into 1 month. That's impossible. Yeah. And so, you know, but I will say this, you know, I'm glad that awareness is brought about during Mental Health Awareness Month. Mm-hmm. I like all the stories and things I've seen so far about people being open and honest about their trials and tribulations they've gone through. Yeah. I always think that helps people to know that, you know, sometimes what you're going through, you know, you might not be the only person going through that, or you might not have been the only person going through that in your life. So it's good to see other people communicating those things and talking about that. So my one challenge to people for Mental Health Awareness Month is, you know, always reflect on yourself. Always look at yourself and ask yourself, what can I do to be a better me? Yeah. Forget the world, forget the distractions, forget the noises, everything else. You are no good to your family, your spouse, your children, your relatives, friends. No matter, you're no good to any of them until you take care of yourself, love yourself, and have compassion and understanding for yourself.
Yeah.
So, that's my challenge to everybody during Mental Health Awareness Month. But for today's show, we got a lot of things to cover today. Our topic for today is talking about scholarships. What is an athletic scholarship? What does it consist of? Well, what is the terminology? How long do they last? What are some of the perks and some of the what we would consider catches to an athletic scholarship? And our scholarship, an athletic scholarship is kind of a merit award for students who excel at their sport. In the years from 2018 to 2019, U.S. colleges with varsity athletic programs awarded almost $4.1 billion in athletic scholarships. So, a lot of money. How is that money being dispersed, especially at across all levels, D1, D2, and D3, and JUCO? So we're going to talk about that as well. We're also going to talk about some, like I said, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So Dr. Pitt's favorite team. We're not going to say America's team. We're just going to say Dr. Pitt's favorite team.
Oh, Ronnie, go ahead. You can say America's team. Y'all going to stop hating on my Cowboys. Cut it out. God don't like ugly.
Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott, who, last year was very open and honest during the pandemic about some of his mental health challenges and things like that, has been putting a lot of initiatives in place. So Dr. Pitts is going to share with us some of the initiatives that Dak Prescott and some other current and former NFL players are putting together for the league. And also, we're also going to talk about this topic. The draft was last weekend, and a lot of HBCU coaches, most prominently Deion Sanders, Doug Williams, and a couple other HBCU coaches came out with a lot of frustration and complaints about HBCU players not getting drafted or at least getting a legitimate shot at the NFL. So we're going to talk about that because I think that is a hot topic. And I also think we need to be able to look at this from many different angles and see why this is an issue and what we can do as a HBCU family to change this. So we got a lot to get into today. Dr. Pitts, you want to go ahead and start us off with Dak Prescott?
Well, before I do that, I think, y'all know I live near the airport. I think that it is imperative, considering that it is Mental Health Awareness Month, to go ahead and do the mental health tip. And the mental health tip of the week that I want to offer.
It slipped my brain. I apologize about that. Slipped my brain.
You're good. It's all good. That's why we a team. Twofold, right? It's twofold. So Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. So that's the first angle that I want to touch on concerning mental health. Ronnie.
Uh-oh.
This work that we do is heartbreaking day in and day out because so many of our clients are children. And what has become so apparent is the role that broken attachment, particularly broken attachment with the mothers, is creating in the mental health deterioration of our children. I tell folk all the time, I don't have a heaven or hell to put anybody in. It is certainly not my intention to judge or to criticize, though. As a disclaimer I put out there, I know that I come hard. It is not my intention to hurt, to offend, to judge, or to criticize. However, as clinicians, we do have a responsibility of assessing, right? And what is apparent to me, and you and I talk about this all the time, is that parents, and for the sake of this tip, mothers in particular, don't seem to recognize the damage that they do by not having healthy attachment and relationships with their children. So my mental health tip this week is going to sound really harsh, and it's probably going to sound really insensitive. But if you're not going to take proper care of these babies, stop having them. There are more forms of birth control out there today than there ever have been since the foundation of the earth. And what ends up happening is, and certainly we recognize that there are extenuating circumstances. We're not talking about those circumstances. We're talking about the irresponsible behavior that goes into giving birth to children over and over and over and over and over again, and not being able to handle the responsibility of parenting that child efficaciously in a manner that is going to set this child up to be mentally well and successful in life. That is a travesty. It is heartbreaking. It is so wrong on so many levels. And I get it, Ronnie. So I do want to extend compassion and sensitivity and state that we understand that multi-generational cycle of brokenness. We understand that hurting people hurt people. But my challenge to the mothers today, because we are the ones that bring forth life, my challenge to the mothers today is this. If you can just, on purpose, be vulnerable and transparent enough to recognize that there's a void in your own life that has hindered your ability to parent your own children in loving and healthy ways that create strong attachment, a strong, healthy bond. There are so many support systems that are available in society today that can help mothers to that perhaps are currently struggling to raise their children in loving and healthy ways because they're struggling because they didn't have that luxury of being raised by a loving and healthy mother. I'm asking you today to seek help. I'm asking you today to make a deliberate and intentional decision to break the cycle that is adversely impacting the lives of children, because it's not fair. It is not fair that day in and day out that Ronnie and I are having children added to our caseload that are so broken, that are so fractured, that they are positioned to continue that horrible cycle because they are not getting the appropriate love and attachment and connection and guidance and direction from the mother that birthed them. The second thing that I want to mention as a tip is, and this will be a segue into the article that I shared about Dak Prescott, is
I
that
definitely want to piggyback on this point too.
okay, we definitely have to talk about mental illness. We know that it is a stigma in society. We know that particularly in Black and Brown communities, people do not want to talk about mental illness. They do not want to talk about trauma. They do not want to talk about the rippling effect that trauma has. But I will tell you this: hurting people hurt people. And so oftentimes, more times than not, from what I have seen as a woman of color, personally and professionally, not only in the Black and Brown communities that I've been blessed and fortunate enough to be involved in around the country, but also in my international work, Ronnie, we are not having these conversations. So we're complicit. We are complicit. We are a part of the problem and not a part of the solution. And in order to break this vicious cycle that is deteriorating the mental health of persons in our communities, we have got to talk about these problems. We have got to seek help, and we have got to make deliberate and intentional decisions to break the cycle and to do something different, something healthy. Because what is ending up happening is generation after generation after generation in our communities The age of the parent is getting younger. These folks are having babies like roaches, rabbits, and every other thing that multiplies really quickly, having babies. And the children, as we talked about before we went live, are coming forth more broken than anything we have ever seen in our society. And it's tragic. And we have got to do something different, and we have got to do something better immediately. I'll let you piggyback and then I'll transition to that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And first and foremost, happy Mother's Day to you, Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, baby.
And happy Mother's Day to my mom and my wife, who's a soon-to-be mother in the next month or so. I think mother. I always tell people, and this is for fathers as well. When you give birth to a child, you're a mom and you're a dad. But what you do with that child is what makes you a mother and a father. And unfortunately, in our society, and especially in the society, in our communities of people of color, I see too many times that women will end up having babies in order to feel unconditional love for the first time in their life.
Yes.
And that right there is such a hard task to put on a child. That and this is why I talked about earlier in my part, when we're talking about Mental Health Awareness Month, is reflecting on yourself, because unfortunately we live in a society where single parenthood is glorified. Being a single mother, being a single father, that's more glorified than having a 2-parent household. And it's funny, me and my sister were actually having this conversation earlier in the week, and she's under the stance, these new kids is different. I'm just gonna put that out there. These new kids is different. Mm-hmm. But she's her stance is, you don't need 2 parents to raise a child. And if you want to be technical, do you need 2 parents to raise a child? Technically, no. But should it be the standard? Hell yes. That should be the standard, because it took 2 to make. If you didn't need 2 parents to raise a child, then women would be asexual and could reproduce with themselves and pump out children at their own leisure without having to deal with a man. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. It takes a man and a woman to birth a child. But for the women today, and I don't want to sound like I'm bashing women or anything, because that's not what I'm doing. Because motherhood is a sacred thing. I always say that y'all's role as mothers and birthing a child could never do it. Could never. Ain't no way in the world. No, it'd be 10 people on this planet if men had to give birth. Ain't no way. No way in the world. So, I have such respect for women and what they have to go through. But, if we're being real and we're being objective about this, a lot of women give birth to children because they've never felt unconditional love, or love that they are willing to accept in their lives for the first time. So they have this child, and they put this pressure on this child to fill their love tank up, to fill their love languages, to quell their love languages and stuff like that. But the child is trying to learn on their own, and you bring this child into an unfavorable environment, a dangerous environment, but you expect that child to give you the same love and nurturing that you've been wanting your entire life. So my challenge to mothers, like Dr. Pitt was saying, is my challenge to mothers is to love yourself. Yeah. Love yourself first. Your child's going to love you regardless. Love yourself first. Their love should be a complement to the love you already have for yourself. So don't put that burden on your children of they have to give you love that you wouldn't expect of yourself, your spouse, loved ones, anybody else. That's your child. A child should give you unconditional love because they want to, not because you need it. Right. So, like I said, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there and soon to be mothers. What you guys do, you all are truly the unsung heroes of this world. Aww. Because we give you something and you all multiply it 10 times over. So whether that's stuff for babies, a home, shelter, food, whatever the case may be, what men provide to women, you all multiply it tenfold over. And because of you all, this is why we're here. This is why we're able to do what we do, because of mothers around the world. So, I want to say a shout out to all the mothers around the world for Mother's Day, but please reflect and have compassion and understanding for yourself.
Yeah. So, you always provoke my thoughts on that. So as you were talking, it made me think about something concerning my own mother. So happy birthday to my queen, my mommy. Yep, 53 years old. I still call my mom mommy. Happy birthday, Paulette Lillian Pitts. Your oldest girl, love you.
Happy birthday, Mrs. Pitts.
Yep. But I think that it's so important to share this. You know, I've said, and she totally knows. I've said that for many, many, many years, my relationship with my mom was very strained, and I was that. I was that example of a victim of broken attachment. Um, it was it was what it was. And growing up, because my grandparents brought me home from the hospital, and I was raised by my grandmother and grandfather initially. My mom didn't come back into my life on a consistent daily basis until I was 4, but I was still with my grandparents every day. So then they went into this co-parenting thing, and very strained, very, very difficult relationship. It wasn't, Ronnie, until I had a conversation with one of my mom's brothers who has since passed. So God bless Uncle Tony and rest his soul. He said to me, your relationship with your mom is not going to heal until you change. I'm the kid. Why I got to change? She the mom. But what he was saying is, you have professed Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Your mom is not saved. Your mom is not a born again believer in Christ. Does she believe in Jesus? Yes, but she has not received salvation. She said, so the onus is on you. Somehow, that just don't seem fair. But okay,
No.
I'm listening. He had my ear. He had my ear. The bottom line of what he was saying was, I had to be the change that I wished to see in my mother. I had to be the bigger person. And my revelation, Ronnie, literally transformed my relationship with my mom. Do we still get on each other's nerves? Absolutely. She'd run me nuts. And I get on her nerves too. But the love and the bond that we have, we're ride or die now. And this is why. When God gave me that revelation, Ronnie, and I finally got to a place where I was willing to forgive her, what God showed me is my mother did the best that she could for who she was and where she was at that particular point in her life, as someone who was wounded to the core of her own soul and has so much unresolved pain. Mm-hmm. She couldn't parent me any different than what she was doing, because her own pain and trauma had created such a barrier, had created such a stumbling block for her, that it was just impossible at that point in time in our lives for her to parent me in a way that I needed her to so desperately. So as God dealt with me in forgiving my mother for being an imperfect mother, what I started sharing with folks, particularly if I was doing a speaking engagement or anything like that, and relationships came up, is that on the part of the parent, there has to be a level of humility where one is able to recognize that they're flawed. They are an imperfect parent. It's not just enough to scream, yell, hoop, holler, cuss, and fuss about what you bought. Mm-hmm. That's not enough. Children, minor children and adult children, we all need love, time, and attention. Mm-hmm. We are relational beings. We need that healthy attachment. And it takes humility for one to acknowledge that they've failed in that area. But that's where the growth lies, Ronnie. That's where the area of opportunity to step outside of one's comfort zone, because it's outside of the comfort zone of functioning from a place of pain every day. It's
Mhm.
outside of that place and space that the healing, the true healing begins. It's outside of that place and space where people can get out of their own way. And
Yeah.
the true healing that is needed to be mentally well can begin to take place. We need to be able to do that. We need to be able to forgive one another. We need to be able to meet each other in a place of common humanity with an open mind and an open heart so that we can start to heal these fractured relationships that are contributing to the deterioration of one's mental wellness. And what that simply means, Ronnie, is for everybody whose trauma has become their drug of choice, you know, anger and trauma is a drug of choice too.
Mm-hmm.
People will use anger and trauma and unforgiveness and bitterness and hatefulness and all of that. That mess is a drug.
Oh
It
yeah.
becomes a crutch for mediocrity. It
Becomes
becomes,
their identity.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
People own it. I'm just, that's just the way I am. You don't like it? No,
Yeah.
actually, I,
They love their misery. They
yeah,
it's almost like a badge of honor. I went
yes,
I went through this. I was treated this way. I was mistreated this way.
yeah.
So when I wild out or I have an attitude,
I have
or
a right to.
if I act like a little bee because I got an attitude and always snapping
Mm-hmm.
on somebody, it's because that's how I was treated.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people this, and I don't try to sound insensitive when I say this, but you know, I can only say this as real as I can, even being a therapist. From birth to 18, you have no control over your surroundings or what happens to you.
Yeah,
From birth to 18, the only thing you have control over is how you handle what happens and how you respond to it.
that's right.
From 18 to the day you die, it might not be easy. If you've been exposed to any amount of trauma from birth to 18 years of age, when you turn an adult, it is your responsibility as that adult to be responsible for your trauma, your mishaps, your weaknesses, your insecurities. That's your responsibility. That is no longer anybody else's responsibilities.
Yeah,
And like I said, people become attached to the identity of their trauma and the pain they've suffered.
yeah.
And they get wrapped up in this cycle of, well, somebody's gonna change it for me. Somebody's gonna change it for me. Somebody's gonna change it for me. Well, if I have kids, if I have kids, everything's got to be better. Everything's gonna be fixed. No, you have to. And I don't know at what point in society we got away from being accountable for our own actions and behaviors despite the circumstances. I don't
Right.
know. Had to be before I got here, but you know, we have to be accountable for everything that we do and say. No
Yeah,
matter what we've been through, we have to be accountable for our actions and our behaviors.
yeah.
Nobody else is going to be accountable for them. And we can't expect anybody else to be accountable for what we do, how we act, despite the trauma. I can understand your trauma. I can understand how you got to be who you are. I can completely understand that and have all the compassion in the world for that. But no matter, there ain't a therapy technique in the world that I can do to convince you to change yourself until you decide to
Right.
change. One of my favorite quotes in mental health is, people change when the pain they're in is greater than the fear of the unknown.
Say that.
That
That's
is
real
my
talk.
favorite. That is my favorite mental health quote,
Mm-hmm.
because no matter what pain I'm going through, no matter what trauma I've been exposed to, it will not change until I decide that I don't want to continue to live with this pain.
Yep.
I'm gonna face it. I'm gonna address it. I might not get close. And I think that's one of the biggest things, especially for mothers, is because of the trauma they've been exposed to, whether it was the hands of an abusive father, abusive mother, abusive family members, being always ridiculed and criticized and things like that. I couldn't be a woman because the standards and the things that y'all have to go through and talk about, you look like this, you're too big, you're too small, you're too dark, you're too light, you got this color lipstick, you got that wig, you got this, it's so many things. Whereas I'm like, well, damn, at what point does a female get to be themselves?
How about that? Say that. Look, and actually be comfortable in your own skin.
Exactly. And I think because of all these things, I call them scapegoats. You know, I call them scapegoats because you can change how you look. You can put this on, you can wear this, you can do that to hide how you really feel. Eventually that runs away.
Yeah.
Eventually that goes away, and then you're just left with you and your thoughts. So what are you going to do then? It's not easy. I always tell them, choose your hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard just maintaining a positive mental health lifestyle. It's just as hard to maintain a negative mental health lifestyle. So choose your hard. Do you want to continue to be in the constant cycle of pain, trauma, and torment that you were subjected to as a child and that you are subjecting yourself to as an adult? Or do you want to go through the hardships of facing it head on, challenging those thoughts, reframing your mind, and looking at the positives of life? Look, the world is what it is. This is not a fun-loving world all the time, but there are things in this world that you can hold on to and appreciate, because it's the little things that you have to appreciate in order to continue to move on every single day. Right. And until we as adults, not children, as adults, until we as adults can find that level of self-awareness, self-love, and self-compassion, then we might start to see behaviors change, people's mindsets change, these trauma bonds that people have as adults change. You know, one of the things, and not to get too far off track, but one of the things that I've seen because of this is, and I'm pretty sure you saw about this too, when Bill and Melinda Gates divorced. You know, they call it the gray divorce era, because a lot of people over the age of 60 are now starting to divorce because they're starting to realize, well, I'm living beyond 60, 65 years old. And, you know, let's be real. A lot of my parents' generation and grandparents' generation, a lot of them stayed married only for the simple fact of, well, what else am I going to do? Especially for the women. The women weren't working 40, 50 years ago like they are now. So if I marry this man who's the sole breadwinner and making all the money,
I'm not leaving him.
What legs do I have to stand on to leave him? But now we're starting to see that shift change, where people are starting to realize, well, look, this is my life. I have to take ownership of my life. And do I really want to die being miserable, or do I want to die doing something that I love? So I think you're starting to see that increase in divorce rates for the older population, for that simple fact of taking ownership and accountability for your trauma. Yeah. I know so many 60 and 50-year-old people who are children because they've never addressed their trauma, especially people of color. And, you know, granted, I get it. The era we live in nowadays is completely different from their era. These things are talked about. It's not taboo. You're not crazy. You're not being sensitive. We talk about these things because that's what it is, you know. Yeah. But I always tell people, you know, it doesn't matter when you get your 40s, 50s, or 60s, you never stop learning. You never stop trying to be a better person. At what point do you feel like you get to 40 or 50 years old and you just mail it in? Why do we have that mindset in our society? When you get to the age, you just mail it in. No, you cannot do that. You always have to keep improving. You change every 7 to 10 years. If your mindset hasn't changed in 7 to 10 years, we need to talk. So,
well, you know what it is, Ronnie? People don't realize that you can be 45, 55, you can be however old you are biologically, but the moment that you experience trauma, particularly if it goes untreated, that's when you stop growing emotionally.
Absolutely.
People don't realize, people don't know that when if you experience trauma at 4, at 5, at 6, or whatever the case may be, and it never gets addressed, you may be biologically 45, but emotionally you're 12. And
to all, and I'm gonna be fully.
That's a show. We'll hit that in the fall. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna be fully transparent real quick. This is my last thing to mothers out here, and I want to wrap this all up. I'm gonna be fully transparent here, and I'm pretty sure my mom wouldn't mind me having this conversation with all you wonderful people today. So I'm gonna be very transparent. My mama was somebody who suffered an immense amount of abuse growing up, sexual, physical, emotional, spiritual, the whole 9 yards. As a result of that, my mother had me to feel unconditional love for the first time in her life, and 2, to have a relationship that wasn't toxic. Yeah. And because of that, she tried to shield me from the world, tried to shield me from the negativity, the negative people and things like that, and make sure that I didn't have to suffer the traumas that she did. While that sounds noble, mothers, I want you to pay attention to this because this is especially important for sons. And I grew up in a 2-parent household, but both my parents suffered extreme traumas growing up. But on my mother's end, because I was a mama's boy and stuff like that, I was very coddled growing up. Mm-hmm. When I became an adult, I like to call it a suspended adolescence. The tribulations and trials that I experienced as a child, and I could just go as my mom as my bailout plan, that was no longer there. So I had to figure it out on my own. So mothers, I get passionate about this conversation because it's like, you have to understand, like, just because you went through a trauma does not mean your children will go through that. Yeah. And it does not mean you can protect them from that at the end of the day. Like I said, the world is going to be what it is. So all you can do is be the best mother you can be and prepare your child for everything possible. You cannot do it for them, but you can guide them and give them the tools that you have for them to make the best decisions possible for them. So I just want to leave it off on that to let mothers know, like, look, it's unfortunate if you've been exposed or had to endure any type of trauma. It's unfortunate, but that does not mean that has to be your life. That doesn't have to be your identity. You can change it, and your children will not fix it for you. It is up to you to fix it for your children so they can see how to handle those emotions and grow up and deal with those things when they become adults.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Sustained. So we're going to go ahead and transition. We want to get this conversation out the way about Dak and Dion real quick, and then we can go ahead and start giving them all this information on scholarships. I just wanted to share, as Ronnie said, everybody knows I love my Dallas Cowboys. I absolutely, positively love my Dallas Cowboys, have since I was 3 years old. So I'm 50 years dedicated. I love my Cowboys, but I love this young man that is our quarterback. Dak Prescott is just amazing. He is just absolutely positively amazing. And his character is his greatness and his excellence and his humility just exudes from every time he opens his mouth. He's just proving day in and day out to be an extraordinary human being. And what he said in this article is, the caption was Dak Prescott is making mental health a part of the conversation in the NFL. And he was quoted as saying, you have to work on it almost each and every day. And what I say to piggyback on that is you do. You have to work on it every day. And what I tell my clients, particularly those that are dealing with anxiety, is that, you didn't get mentally ill overnight. Mm. You worked at being mentally ill every day. Whatever it is that, you were holding on to and had trouble letting go of, or whatever the case may be, it's untreated, it's this, it's that, it's a third. You worked on it every day to get to a place of mental unwellness, to get to a place of mental instability. So why not work on your mental wellness every day? The article goes on to say that the NFL has taken notice as well. In 2019, the league began an initiative requiring all teams to hire an in-house mental health professional. Each franchise is required to have a behavioral health clinician at their facility for at least 8 hours a day. Additionally, the clinician helps coordinate personalized mental health care for players. Dak said, I think the NFL is obligated to help, and they have. That's exciting, and that's refreshing for me to know that mental health is being coached like a skill. That's exactly what it is. You have to work on it almost each and every day for it to be where you want it to be. And then there's other initiatives. Odyssey is doing an I'm Listening initiative that aims to encourage those who are dealing with mental health issues to understand that they are not alone. If you or anyone you know is struggling with depression or anxiety or any other type of mental illness, or if there's someone that you love and care about that is, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 1-800-273-8255. And you can also do a Google search. Ronnie and I, as you all know, Ronnie is in the Virginia area. I actually work with clients all over the country and around the world. So you can go to my website and find out how to get on my caseload. But we're here for you. We're here for you, and we want you to get help. We want you to work on your mental wellness each and every single day. You deserve that. You deserve to be mentally well. Your children, if you have children, deserve for you to be mentally well. Your community, you have a right to be of sound mind. Take ownership of your wellness.
Shout
Ronnie.
out Dak. Let's shout out Dak Prescott one more time because
Mhm.
man, there's 31 other teams that will be so deserving of Dak, and he just had to be on the Cowboys. I just don't. Dak is, I ain't gonna lie, my disdain for the Cowboys might run deep, but I root for Dak Prescott, not only as a black man and a black quarterback, but just a man, period, because it great man, great man. I'm glad to say, that he's a brother in football, and a biracial brother of mine as well. So, but I'm just proud of him, and bringing, having the courage to stand on his platform and be open and honest about his own issues and things that he's had to deal with the loss of his brother, battling with depression and things like that. So, shout out to Dak Prescott and his initiative, because it's like we said, it's long overdue. It's long overdue, and this needs to be the standard going forward.
Hey, Ronnie, and I'm going to lighten it up for a second. You know how people say we have not because we ask not? So I'm putting it out in the universe because I want to draw that positive energy to me. You know what one of my biggest dreams is? This is going to sound so corny and cheesy, but I swear, I told Andre and Eric, I was like, I'm going to do that. I don't know how, but a way is going to be made for me to do that. What I want is to be able to get a picture taken with the team, with Dak, Zeke, and Amari holding me like they're like look for real, laying across their arms for real. Like with me like posed like this, chilling with them holding me and the whole team behind me and me going, told you. That's what I want. So for anybody that's listening that can make that happen for Dr. Pitts, I only live 15 minutes from the stadium. Let me just go ahead and say that. That's on purpose, by the way. That was on purpose. I only live 15 minutes from the stadium. I want that team picture where they're carrying me like a rolled carpet. I want that picture.
Oh man.
I don't know why, but I want that picture.
Oh man.
Okay.
If it comes true, the power of manifestation, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you if you don't believe in manifesting your dreams. And if that right there happens, ladies and gentlemen, you can manifest anything you want.
Say it. I'm speaking it into existence. I'm speaking it into existence. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Okay.
So let's get into this other topic real quick. So as everybody knows, the NFL draft happened last weekend from Thursday to Sunday. 259 well-deserving, more than deserving football student athletes were drafted into the NFL. Lives changed forever.
Yeah.
However, and this has become a constant theme, not only in the last couple of years, but really for the last 3 or 4 decades, if we're being totally truthful, is the decreased amount of attention and chances that HBCU players are getting at being selected in the NFL draft. And so, like people like Deion Sanders came out and said, he has a team full of players who are more than deserving to be drafted in the NFL. One of the actual senior advisors for the Washington football team, Doug Williams, who is an HBCU graduate, coached at an HBCU at Grambling State, and won as a Black NFL quarterback, was actually the first Black NFL quarterback to win a Super Bowl, has also said, it's a travesty that a lot of these student athletes at HBCUs are not getting looked at. So, I hear this all the time, being an HBCU graduate, playing at a HBCU, I hear this all the time. And so I wanted to just, before I hand it over to Dr. Pitts, I just wanted to share my thoughts on this real quick, and we can kind of go back and forth. But so when I was at Virginia State playing, going into my junior year, our head coach at the time, Coach Latrell Scott, he had connections to the NFL. He had friends, he had colleagues who were in the league, were scouts and things like that. And we were fortunate enough to have a scout from the New York Giants come to our practice. And so, that was my first time having a conversation with an NFL scout. You couldn't tell me, and out of all the Division I letters I got in high school, seeing an NFL scout on a Virginia State practice field and having a conversation with him about the realm of possibility of me not being drafted, but having a shot to try out, mine was blown, and it was life-changing. Unfortunately, injuries happened shortly after that, and so my NFL dreams were dashed immediately. But I will say this. I do believe, and I do agree with Doug Williams and Deion Sanders in the sense that, are there HBCU student athletes on football teams who are more than qualified to play in the NFL? Yes. However, and I think this really speaks to the multitude of systems that have failed our Black HBCU student athletes, is here are the common themes about a player who might deserve to go to the NFL, but here are the common themes. One of three things might be true. Either they're too small, the grades were terrible, or their attitude was terrible. Those three things right there are the reason why a Black student athlete 9 times out of 10 doesn't land at a Division I school that was recruiting them, but lands at an HBCU. And let's be all the way real about this. Not every single HBCU that has a football team is good in any capacity.
Wow.
I mean, let's just be real about it. Like, no, not. But I mean, see, look, I'm a realist when it comes to football. If you got a good program, you got a good program. If you got a terrible program, well, that's just what it is. That's just what it is. So, do I think there should be something that HBCU should do to get more notoriety for their players? Absolutely. But when I think about it, like at Virginia State, we had a player back in 2017, Trenton Cannon, got drafted in the 6th round by the New York Jets. He was literally the first player at Virginia State to be drafted since, I think, 1988.
Wow. Okay.
He was the first player from Virginia State to even get a tryout.
Wow.
Since 1988. And so I'm not going to say the only reason, but one of the biggest reasons why that was even possible is because the head coach who is at Virginia State right now, Coach Reggie Barlow, played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2001 and 2002, but also played in the league for 8 years. Wow. And one of his teammates happened to be in the front office of the New York Jets.
Not what you know, who you know.
Connections. So I think for HBCUs, one of the biggest things is having that connections to the league. Yeah. And so we talked about this back in November when Deion was first hired. And my challenge to Deion, and my challenge still to this day to Deion and all these other NFL players who are hopping on this trend of now all of a sudden they want to go coach at HBCUs. I'm going to get into that in a second. But my challenge to Deion Sanders is will players who go to Jackson State get a lot easier look at going to the league? Absolutely. If Deion says you can play, you can play. I'm going to take Deion Sanders' word over a lot of these scouts because Deion Sanders is arguably one of the top 5 defensive players in NFL history and top 1 cornerback in NFL history. So if he's looking at a player and he tells somebody, oh, they can play, oh, they're a dog, I'm going to take Deion's word for it. But my challenge to Deion was, and my fear is, because talks had started to come out in the last couple of weeks about him leaving and going to a Division I school. My fear is that he won't be there long enough to establish a system, not only for players to be looked at, but for coaches to have a legitimate shot at building a system within the HBCUs. Because especially at the lower level HBCUs, Division II and stuff like that, a lot of those coaches are just recycled from school to school to school. Mm-hmm. Not because they're worthy of the job, because that's the only job available for a Black coach. Mm-hmm. And these coaches who are at these HBCUs already, they're trying. They're doing the best they can.
Ronnie, pause for a second. Turn your video back on. That's on me. I'm sorry.
Oh, good. All right. So I say all that to say I think this issue kind of got blown up bigger than what it needed to be, because there's a lot of things in place here. A lot of these HBCUs just lack the funding and resources to get connections to have their players have a legitimate shot. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, because a lot of these players who would be worthy of going to the NFL, because they've already come from hardships, because they've already come from, a disadvantage of whether they weren't big enough, fast enough, tall enough, their grades weren't good enough. And I mean, honestly, let's be real. If the grades were the reason you couldn't go to a Division I school, I mean, let's be real. Division I schools are putting people in college who have 1.0 GPAs and stuff like that, and they're just soliciting these kids for the profit. So let's be real about that. These Division I schools are doing that. But when you have red flags and baggage coming out of high school, it's so easy for these bigger schools to just dismiss you and say, nah, they're going to be a cancer to the team. We already got enough risky players as it is. They can go to a smaller school. And they get funneled down to these smaller schools. And 9 times out of 10, those kids who get funneled down to HBCUs or smaller schools, they're just kind of like, well, there's no way in hell I'm getting to the NFL. Mm-hmm. I always tell people, if you're good enough, they'll find you. If you're fast enough, if you're strong enough, if your technique is solid, somebody will find you. But let's be real, people. If I'm investing millions of dollars into a student athlete, I want the best of the best. Mm-hmm. And let's be real, the best of the best talent right now today is at the Division I level. Is all the talent up there worthy of going to the NFL? Absolutely not. We see that all the time. Only 259 players get drafted. Right. There's well over 5,000 football student athletes at the Division I level, just a Division I. So
not even 10% are going to the draft.
Absolutely. So, us as HBCUs, we have to create a system. And this is my challenge to all these former NFL players who are going to these schools, like Marshall Faulk has interest in Southern, Eddie George going to Tennessee State. I have no problem with that. Mm-hmm. Glad you're going to HBCU, but do not use that HBCU as a tryout to prove that you are competent enough to coach. And then as soon as you have one halfway decent season, you dip to go to a bigger school because that's where you wanted to be the whole time. But they told you, this prominent Black former NFL player, that we don't care how good you was on the football field. You've never coached before. So go to a school where they don't mind hiring anybody, because let's be real. These players were great in the NFL, but that doesn't mean you can coach. Right. There's a lot of players who are great players but can't coach. Yeah. And there's a lot of great coaches who couldn't play. So don't go to these HBCUs and solicit them for your own benefit. And that's the benefit of you getting to a bigger school to be a coach. My challenge to Deion Sanders remains to this day: create a system at Jackson State that not only benefits the players, but the coaches as well, because those coaches deserve to have a chance too. And so many times we see Black coaches who do not get a chance at the larger level. Hell, we already see at the NFL level, Black people can't even get hired as head coaches, general managers, assistant coaches, and things like that. So why are we going to continue to do this at our HBCU? Deion, Marshall, Eddie, I'm challenging all three of you all to create a system that will sustain long after you're there, because that is the only way HBCUs will gain that respect back and have their players get legitimate shots at looking at them. That is the only way. We have to create a system that will be sustained long after these prominent Black figures leave these schools. Deion's not about to be at Jackson State for 10, 20 years. We know that. Marshall's not about to be at Southern for more than 5 years. Eddie George not about to be at Jackson State for more than Tennessee State for more than 5 years. So create a system, hire competent Black coaches, create a system, Black ADs, Black athletic trainers, Black assistant coaches, create a system that not only benefits the players, but the coaches as well. Because if we can get these coaches to see, if we can get these bigger schools and these NFL teams to be like, oh, well, snap, this assistant coach at Jackson State, he know what he's doing. We need to bring him up. That's somebody you're bringing up from an HBCU that can go back and say, hey, look, I had this player at Jackson State, a hell of a ball player, had a little rough coming out of high school, but he's got it together. He's dogged all these boys out here. I don't care if it's Division 1, 2, or 3. He's dogging these boys. Yeah. That's how you get the shots. That's how we have to do it. We just can't sit there and cry and complain, oh, they're not getting a shot. They're not getting a shot. Create a system so they can have a shot.
All right now. Call to action. Get them, Ronnie. Okay. All right. Let's talk about scholarships.
Man.
Got that up.
So
curved. Yeah.
If we're going, like I said, if we're going to talk, let's be real. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's not just cry and say, well, they got to help us out. No, what are we going to do to help ourselves?
Yeah.
So, all right. So scholarships. So as a high school student athlete, and if you're a high school student athlete listening to this right now, I'm pretty sure at one point or another in your high school athletic career, if you've planned on going to play a sport in college, your mindset is, well, I got to get a full ride.
Yeah.
For me, when I was in high school, I knew I had to get a full ride to go to college because I knew my parents couldn't afford to send me to college and weren't going to pay for me to go to college. So football had to work. I had to get a full ride. And if I'm being completely honest, my decision on going to Virginia State was based solely off the fact that they were the only school to give me an outright full ride. I had half scholarship offers. I had half tuition assistance from Division III schools, and I had preferred walk-on spots from Division I schools. Virginia State was the only school out of all the, I had well over 60 schools recruit me at all three levels, Division I, II, and III. Well over 60 schools recruit me. Virginia State was the only school that offered me a full ride. And when I heard the words full ride, I didn't hesitate. I'm coming to Trojan land. Didn't even hesitate. So what is an athletic scholarship? Why is it so important? What does it cover? What does it do? So typically, let's start at Division I level. Division I schools have 85 scholarships on their football team, 85 scholarship positions on their football team. That means they can have up to 85 players on full athletic scholarships on their team. At the Division II level, you can have up to 35 scholarship players on your football team. Now, Division III is different. Division III does not do scholarships at all. Most Division III schools are private schools, so you have to pay out of pocket or have academic scholarships and things of that nature. But at Division I and Division II levels, those scholarships are hotly contested. I always tell people that there's on average 250,000 high school football student athletes who are seniors on average. Out of those 250,000, only maybe 5 to 10,000 of them will get partial money. Less than that get full rides. So, why is this full ride so important? Well, first and foremost, a full ride pays for your schooling. So typically when we talk about a full ride is just a fancy way of saying you have an academic scholarship, but you're also playing a sport. So when a coach comes in and say, hey, we like what you're doing on the football field. We like who you are as a person. You're doing good in the classroom. We want to extend you a full athletic scholarship. That full athletic scholarship basically covers tuition, room and board if you stay on campus, books. And if you're at the Division I level, on average, you might get anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 per semester for a stipend. At the Division II level, you're not going to get no stipend. I'm just going to let y'all know that right now.
Ronnie, does it cover your meal plan too?
It does cover your meal plan. That was the other thing. It covers your meal plan. So those are kind of like the bare minimum coverages that you get with a full athletic scholarship. So now that's at the Division I level. So now let's back it down to the Division II level where I was at. And so this is how crazy it gets with scholarships. So at the Division II level, there's well over, I think, 100 Division II football teams at the Division II level. Now, those schools are allotted up to 35 full ride scholarship players. Now, however, at Virginia State, even though we were allotted 35 scholarships, those scholarships are broken up amongst the entire team. Give you
Ronnie,
an example.
for 2 seconds, just for clarity's sake for our viewing and listening audience. So 85 at D1 level, and because there's 21 Division I HBCUs, and then 35 at the D2 level. How many players are on those rosters total?
So on a Division I roster, on average, they carry anywhere from 100 to 120 players on average at the Division I level. Like the bigger schools like Alabama, Florida, and stuff like that, they're closest to the 120 player range. The FCS schools, the Division I AA schools, where all our Division I HBCUs are at, they will carry anywhere from 85 to 100, 110, depending on their budget and their resources. At Division II, my last year at Virginia State, we only had I think we only had like maybe 60 players on the team. Not a lot of players. Now, as of before COVID, as of 2019, that number has shot up to Virginia State had 113 players on their roster. Now Division II level, like I said, so when I was a freshman at Virginia State and I got my full ride, I was one of 4 student athletes on the football team who had a full athletic scholarship. Those that other 31 scholarships money that was given to Virginia State, or that Virginia State is allotted to have, they break that money up amongst the rest of the team. So for example, you might have a player who might get their room and board covered. You might have a player who gets their books covered. You might have a player who gets their meal plan covered. So they might get $1,000 for this, $2,000 for that, $3,000 for this, for that semester and year. But You also have some Division II schools who can give 35 players full ride scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
So already right then and there, you already see a competitive disadvantage at the Division II level, because none of the HBCUs at the Division II level can give 35 players a full ride scholarship.
Right. They just don't
because
have the money.
they lack the resources, they lack the funding, they lack the consistent funding. And I mean, let's be real. There's not necessarily so much of a drop off of talent from Division I, Division II, but for example, I would always tell people the biggest difference between Division I and Division II are the linemen.
Okay.
And so I played on the offensive line. That's really where you see the biggest difference at when we talk about scholarships and the competition levels, because most linemen at the D2 and D3 level are relatively small. Whereas your big 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guys, most times out of 10, they go to Division I.
Okay.
So that's where you really see the largest drop off of competition and talent. But as far as like just across the board with quarterbacks and things like that, the talent level is pretty equal. But then you have the other factors where I talked about, where you have grades, behaviors, environment, support system, things like that hinder players from, reaching their full athletic potential. So now that's just kind of the basics of athletic scholarships. Now, before I got to college, it used to be when you signed an athletic scholarship, it was covered for 4 years. If you were on that football team for 4 or 5 years, a basketball team, whatever team you played for, when you signed that national letter of intent to go to your college, you were locked in for 4 to 5 years. Now they've done away with that. So now when you sign when you're a high school student athlete and you get a full ride and you sign your national letter of intent on National Signing Day, you're signing for your scholarship for 1 academic school year. So for kids who are going to college now, for high school student athletes who are going to college this fall, those of you who signed that first Wednesday in February for National Signing Day, when you sign that national letter of intent, that guarantees that your scholarship, as long as you don't violate any of the rules of the school or the football team or the scholarship, your schooling and stuff like that is covered for that academic year. So for the 2021-2022 academic year, all your stuff that's under that scholarship is covered.
Okay.
Now, here's where it gets a little tricky for student athletes. Now, let's say you go to a Division I school, 4-star recruit, you was best player in your state, whatever the case may be. You go to a big Division I school and you ain't as good as you thought you was. But this school done gave you a full ride. That school in the spring semester. So typically in the spring semester is when you will review your scholarship. Coach will bring you in after spring ball, and we do what we call exit interview. So I believe all schools do this, even in pros. So what we do is called exit interviews. And an exit interview basically is when you sit down with your position coach and your head coach, and they go over your strengths, your weaknesses, what you want to improve, your goals going into the next season. And then at the very end, whether you're a scholarship player or you've never been on scholarship, a coach can either do one of 3 things. If you're on scholarship, they can either increase your scholarship amount, keep your scholarship amount the same, or decrease it, or even take it away from you. So 4 things, I apologize. So they can either increase the amount, keep it the same, decrease it, or take your scholarship away from you, period. If you're not on scholarship and you have proven yourself to be an asset to the football team, an asset to the school, and things like that, you can definitely earn a scholarship. Now, unfortunately, at most Division I schools, if you are what we consider a preferred walk-on, so a preferred walk-on is a high school student athlete who is asked by that program to come try out for the football team or basketball team or whatever the case may be. And if you make the team, cool, but we're not footing any of your bill for that year.
Okay.
So you got to go out here and get a student loan, or if you got academic scholarships, or if you apply for scholarships, the whole 9 yards, you got that on your own. Now, if you prove yourself through the ranks and work your way up and become a contributor to the team and stuff like that, oftentimes coaches will reward you for paying for your final year of school. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of videos on SportsCenter and stuff like that, where coaches will, have 3 or 4 players who have been walk-ons, their entire career. And then that last year, they get a scholarship for that final year. And, that's a blessing for that kid because they've earned that. When we think of when you think of being a scholar student athlete and a non-scholar student athlete, it's almost kind of like the haves and the have-nots. Mm-hmm. When you get offered a full scholarship, you clearly doing something right. Clearly they saw something about you. They're like, well, look, we want to make this investment in you because we feel that you are going to benefit our program and our school for the next 4 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're not a scholarship athlete, you might look at it like, well, the school really ain't investing in me, so I'm really not going to do much to invest in them. I'm just going to do what I got to do. And that happens. Yeah. Oftentimes those players get weeded out. But that's how the scholarship process works at the Division I and Division II level. You have your full rides, you have your partial scholarships, and you have your preferred walk-on positions. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people this. If you are a partial scholarship or preferred walk-on, even if you have a full ride scholarship, here's a little tidbit for my high school student athletes. Whether you're a full ride, partial, or preferred walk-on, there is nothing that says you cannot apply for more scholarships outside of your athletic scholarship.
Yeah.
For example, when I got my full ride from Virginia State, I also won 4 other scholarships outside of football. I had won a Comcast Leadership Scholarship. Mm-hmm. I had got a free $500 for being left-handed.
Yeah.
I got a scholarship.
I'm gonna touch on that stuff in a minute. Go ahead.
I had got a scholarship for. You ever heard James Ferrier, linebacker for the Steelers?
Mm-mm.
He was a linebacker for the Steelers in the early 2000s. He was actually a graduate of my high school, mm-hmm. and he had an annual scholarship every year that he would give to a senior student athlete going to college. I happened to win it that year, so I also had that money. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing about that is when you have more money coming in than that for that allotted school year, you get what we call a refund check.
Oh, you go with that refund check again.
And for my current student athletes who are on scholarship or academic scholarship, whatever the case may be, that refund check is like tax time every semester. So I say all that to say, for my student athletes out there, your athletic scholarship does not have to be the only money you're getting coming in for that school year. And even for the current student athletes who are in college, there are scholarships you can apply for while you're in college and get those and earn that money. And 9 times out of 10, if your tuition and stuff is already covered, well, all that money comes to you directly.
Yeah.
So that's an added benefit.
Yeah. I want to touch on that because I want to make sure that people understand that the top 3, football, basketball, and baseball, is not all that's available to them. But to your point, Ronnie, one of the things that I wanted to say is that people need to understand that because each division does set rules about athletic department funding and the award amounts vary, as you said, some are full tuition awards while others are only providing the partial financial aid, as Ronnie said. So you're going to have to find other ways to fund your education. So just note to self, I want everybody to pay real close attention to this information I'm going to give you. There are endless, Ronnie talked about different types of scholarships that you can get. There's academic and Pell Grant and all this stuff, but there are other athletic scholarships out there that are provided by private funding sources, i.e. like the one that you gave, from the gentleman from the Steelers. But you've got Foot Locker Scholar Athletes Program, the New York Ramblers Scholarship for Student Athletes, Craig N. Epstein Memorial Scholarship Fund, Triple Impact Competitor Scholarship, Lee Brennan Memorial Scholarship, Norma and Rita Nussbickle Memorial Scholarship, Sean Callahan Memorial Scholarship Fund, Coach Wade Pittsford Scholarship, Big Sun Scholarship, Mike Frick Memorial Baseball Scholarship. There are countless scholarships out there. I tell people all the time, I remember back when I was still doing motivational, inspirational speaking for the educational division of Monster.com. And Monster still has one of the largest free scholarship searches that's out there, fastweb.com. Huge free scholarship information out there that students can apply for. Get that money. There's millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in scholarship money that's awarded each year. But Ronnie, there's millions of dollars of scholarship money that goes unawarded every year because people aren't applying for it. So I want to strongly encourage student athletes, particularly at the high school level. And again, as you said, even at the collegiate level, to go after this money. It is out there for the taking, because about 1 in 14 high school athletes go on to play a varsity sport, and went on to play a varsity sport back in 2018. And 1 in 54 went on to play at NCAA Division I schools. What we're recommending, and I'm going to share with you sort of like a checklist of sorts to help you get some additional insight as to what you need to know, because what do we know? People make decisions based on wrong and limited information, right? They think that, oh, I didn't get a full ride, I can't get. No, there's resources available. To boost your odds of getting an athletic scholarship, it might be useful to take an active role early on. You have to educate yourself, and this is what HT Pregame is all about. I'm going to give you some tips to think about that can help you be found by those coaches that are doing recruiting. So one of the things that we want you to think about is figure out which division sport you want to play. To do this, some student athletes use the recruitment services of an agency, and using this type of service can be a useful way to understand what skills you have and which division level lines up with your sports talent. So I will tell you, one of the things that I said, and he decided not to do it because he wanted, his life. Andre always excelled at sports. He played football, he played basketball, he played baseball, he ran track. But here was what Andre's secret weapon was. Andre was swimming at lifeguard strength at the age of 12. When I had him tested to see what his swimming strength was, the instructor said, ma'am, he's already swimming at lifeguard strength at 12 years old. He had passed the test and all that stuff that they did. He passed it. And of course, he couldn't work as a lifeguard because he was only 12, but he was already swimming with that strength at 12 years old. So what would that have looked like had we been in an environment where the high school that he went to or the middle school that he went to had a swimming team that, like some of these schools in affluent areas have, what would that have looked like? That could have looked very different. And for all intents and purposes, he could have very easily gone to college on a swim scholarship as opposed to football, basketball, baseball, or track and field, right? So that's the first thing. Figure out which division sport you want to play. Then the other thing we're recommending that you do is make sure that your eligibility is in order. You have to make sure that your eligibility is in order, because in order to be eligible to play your sport in college, you must meet the specific criteria that is set before you. The other thing that we want you to keep in mind is research the schools in your chosen division. Once you have a clear idea of these skills, the next step is you got to research the schools. You have to research them. You have to know don't just say, it's like, and I think I can speak for Ronnie on this. It's like, Virginia State offered him a full scholarship, but he was right there. Like, he still knew what Virginia State offered. He knew what he didn't be like, oh, they gave me a full ride. I don't know jack about the school, but I'm gonna go there. That wasn't the case, right? So we need you to know what you're getting involved in, because you're going to want to take into consideration the location of the school, the academic program. And here's not to rain on your parade. It's not likely that you're going to go to the professional league. So you're going to want to know what type of academics the school is offering. You're going to also want to know what the athletics and culture is at that school. That is going to be very, very important to help you to make a well-informed decision. The other thing that we want you to consider is put an athletic resume together. Like, you've heard Ronnie talk week after week after week about, the highlight tapes and reels and all that stuff, and however, you're doing that now. But you're going to want to do an athletic resume where you can gather a list of coaches' names and emails, compile a standout athletic resume about your performance stats, your awards, your academic transcripts, your ACT and SAT scores, and the video or electronic means that you use to showcase your skills so the coach can evaluate you. You want to make sure that you stand out in the crowd. You want to make sure that you're the one that's going above and beyond to get the attention of the coach that's going to be possibly recruiting you. The other thing that I'm going to recommend that you do is make contact with the coaches. Instead of sending a mass email, you might consider using a more personal approach. You could write a captivating subject line. You could put your name, position, grade level on a key stat. Then tell each coach what draws you to their school, beside the fact that you're hoping that they're going to offer you a full ride. You want to be more, you want to make it more intimate. Y'all gonna give me that money? I'm gonna come there. No, it's not. You want to make it more personal than that. You want to be your authentic self in this process. The other thing that we want you to take into consideration is you want to see what scholarship offers you might qualify for. So you're going to want to look at, and Ronnie just alluded to it, actually stated it right out, you may qualify for an athletic scholarship, but if you got, a 4.3 on a 5.0 scale, holla, you're going to qualify for some academic loot too. Let them give it to you.
And you better take every penny of it too.
Say it. You look now, you qualifying for all this money, get that money. Get that money. So the other thing that I think that it's important for us to touch on this last 15 minutes, Ronnie, is exactly what I said where my own son was concerned, in that I think particularly for us as a people, I think we make the mistake of limiting our thinking by sending the message to scholar athletes from the time they start playing midget football and t-ball at 5 that football, basketball, and baseball is the only way. When in actuality, what we're going to do is teach them how to diversify their athletic portfolio, right? We're going to teach them like mutual funds, because that's not the only way. When you think about the fact that there are 6 sports that you can receive a full ride scholarship for, you've got football, men's basketball, women's basketball, volleyball, women's gymnastics, and tennis. There are also other sports out there that are giving away a lot of money, but Black kids and brown kids are oblivious to this scholarship money that's out there, because they've been groomed since birth that it's all about football, basketball, and baseball. What about soccer? What about lacrosse?
I mean, even for Black people, baseball.
Yeah,
a lot. I mean, and I mean, a lot of the people of color we see in baseball are from the Caribbean or Cuba and things like that. Not nearly as many just full out, African Americans in baseball. And I always tell people, like, baseball money is
real.
Football is the only professional sport where their contracts are not fully guaranteed.
Yeah.
But for our people, it seems like that's one of the biggest ones between that and basketball is funneled to. And I always tell people, shoot, I wouldn't care if my son played baseball, because them contracts, as soon as you sign that dotted line, they got to pay you that money. What's his name? Bo Bonilla, African American who played for the Mets. They pay him $1 million. They've been paying him $1 million every single year on July 1st from 2003 until 2035.
Wow.
So baseball got that old money. Baseball got that 3, 4, 5 generations worth of wealth. So yeah, baseball is where it's at. Soccer too.
I'm about to mess them up. Because I want to tell
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Football, basketball, baseball, soccer, ice hockey. But check this out. I'm gonna give you some stats on the scholarship money that's out there for these non-traditional sports that Black and brown folk don't want to apply for. So we have archery gives away $101,000 worth of scholarships.
Oh wow.
Baseball, $688,000, and mind you, this is collegiate, right? $688,000 in scholarships for baseball. Basketball, $631,000. Bowling, $447,000 worth of scholarship money for bowling.
Dang.
I'm about to mess you up. You ready? $601,000 in scholarship money for cheerleading. Right.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Dang, the Wolves at Virginia State getting paid like that?
It gets better. Fencing. You know, black folk with a sword.
Mm-hmm.
On guard. Fencing. $521,000 in scholarship money.
They got equestrian on there too.
Wait a minute. I'm not sure. Field hockey, $615,000.
Hey, dang.
Golf, $751,000.
Now I really think we really need to. Tiger Woods did himself a disservice by saying he not black, he Tiger Woods.
How about that?
But
gymnastics, $593,000. Ice hockey, $591,000. Lacrosse, $607,000. Look, I'm gonna be culturally insensitive. Rifle scholarships, $313,000. Now you know black folk know how to shoot.
Hey,
Get that money.
I ain't gonna lie, we probably wouldn't be able to do hockey either, because if I played hockey, I'm not gonna have no stick. I'm just an enforcer. I'm just skating around the ice the whole time, looking to catch somebody slipping.
The Kings of Comedy with Cedric the Entertainer skating across the stage.
That's exactly. Just looking for somebody.
Look, sailing, $621,000. Skiing and snowboarding, $594,000. Soccer, $637,000. Softball, Ronnie. Softball, $62,000. Swimming, $664,000. Track and field, $65,000. Volleyball, $606,000. And wrestling, $607,000 in scholarship money.
You know what's crazy? You know what's crazy about those other sports you were talking about? And I don't know if you've had a chance to see it. The college admission scandal documentary on Netflix that came out maybe a month or so ago. So you remember the college admission scandal that came out? I want to say it was last year or late 2019, with those celebrities who were paying to get their kids into school and stuff. So what they were doing,
I do remember that.
So like USC was one of the schools who got in trouble. So what they were doing is they're the assistant AD at University of Southern California. Their it was like their volleyball team, their rowing team. Stanford had their sailing team. What these schools were doing is this one guy was basically having these high profile people, whether it was celebrities, lawyers, judges, whole 9 yards, CEOs and everything. They were paying this man upwards of anywhere from $500,000 to a couple million. And they were using these sports that you just listed as a way to get their kids on. They were like, look, we'll just have them come on as a preferred walk-on. And then they don't even have to come out for the first day. So that takes up a scholarship spot for another person right there. And a lot of people in an uproar about that. And it makes sense. You know, you got these people who have the means of literally paying to get their kid into school, whether or not they want to go or not. And that deprives another deserving student athlete of that spot on that team. So I really think that, you know, we definitely should, you know, encourage our people of color to look at these other sports and stuff like that, because like you said, the chances of you going professional in football, basketball, I mean, even baseball, I mean, it's really hard to go professional in baseball because you have so many farm teams that, you know, you might be on the farm system team for 5-10 years before you even get called up to the major leagues and get your first real contract. So even those sports right there, where there's so much money in them, the competition and the flooding of so many people who want to be in that position is so high. You have all these other sports. For softball, I mean, softball doesn't get the credit it deserves, but softball is not an easy sport to play. It's not an easy sport to play. Neither is, you know, rowing, sailing, volleyball, golf. Golf is not an easy sport if anybody has ever played golf, you know exactly how hard it is to play golf. It is not easy. But those are things right there, like to your point, that kids can do. I know we got about 6 minutes left. I want to flesh this out.
One more, because we had an audience member I'm gonna unmute their mic so that they can make their question or comment
Okay.
respect of time. And the question is how much money was it for rowing for scholarships? I don't have that stat. I said sailing,
You
right?
said sailing. Yeah, sailing
I
was like
said
a couple
sailing.
100,000, I
You know
believe.
what? I had the rowing didn't come up on, but that was the audience members' question is what the rowing scholarships are. I would have to research that further because it didn't show up on my when I did my research on what all of the other scholarship amounts were. It didn't come up on my list. I mean, clearly, we know that people go to school. Especially the Ivy League schools have
Yeah.
rowing teams. The Ivy League schools definitely have rowing teams, but I'm not sure. But it's definitely worthy of exploration to see because my thing is I'm not we love sports. I love all sports. I'm particularly passionate about football, but why not consider going an alternative route? Why not? You know what I mean? Particularly when you think about the fact that every sport that we named has a professional league.
Mm-hmm.
Every single solitary sport that we talked about today has a professional league. So, to your point about dreams being dashed, and we've said it on other shows before, just because the way you initially envisioned it didn't work out the way that you planned doesn't mean that your dream can't come true. It just might be
Absolutely.
packaged a
Mm-hmm.
little bit differently than what you anticipated. So don't be discouraged. You were going to say, we got 4 minutes left.
Yes, I want to flesh out these 2 points to you real quick and get your
Yep.
thoughts on them. Because last month was financial literacy month and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as I always tell people, like, when you're a student athlete, like, if you can get your school paid for, go for it, because
Mm-hmm.
trust me, you might think that, well, I can take the risk of being a preferred walk-on and getting a partial scholarship and getting these student loans and stuff like that to achieve my dream. While
Mm-hmm.
that's admirable and honorable, and for some people, they make it work. For some people, taking that chance and doing that, it works out. But that doesn't work out for everybody.
Right.
So I was thinking, I was like, when we talk about starting so young and getting these, having parents start their kids young, I always think, like, well, how much of this should be put on the parents to already have something in place for the children, to where, that pressure of not only am I trying to do good enough to get recognized by coaches, but I have to go above and beyond just to get my school paid for. Well, hell, what if I go above and beyond, and because I'm from the hood, or because my parents just don't have it, we're comfortable, but they just don't have it and never had it in place.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have this added pressure on me as a high school student athlete, where I literally have to go really above and beyond just to get this piece of paper to cover, books and stuff for a year. And I'm still, my services, whether I'm a scholarship athlete or not, I'm still being exploited by this school for the sole purpose of bringing a profit and notoriety to this school.
Yeah.
So, I challenge the parents, if you're able to do it, start young. Have a 5-9 plan. Have something put to the side for your children. Or hell, even at the worst case scenario, whether it's in index funds or whatever the case may be, have that money already for your child. So if they want to go be a preferred walk-on in a Division I school or whatever the case may be, have at it. Go live your dream. Your school's already paid for. We put that in place for you. Now, if your kid gets a full ride scholarship and you got that money set into the side, well, that's money to help them sooner they graduate and they can go on and do more things with their life. But parents, we have to not only expect our kids to put themselves in position, but you should also, first and foremost, be putting your kid in position well before they get to high school. Number 2, last point. I really wonder, going, especially for Division I, once this NIL bill becomes across the board for Division I schools, because I know it's going to take a while for Division II and Division III, but at the Division I level, I wonder for kids who, we consider popular, or able to grab attention on social media and get paid for it, I wonder if that's going to decrease the need or the value of a full ride scholarship if this player can basically fund their own way through school just off their name, image, and likeness. especially for those players who prefer walk-ons and got partial scholarships. Well, hell, I don't need a full ride if I'm such an influencer on Instagram. Well, hell, Instagram's paying me and I got these endorsement deals coming in. I don't need a full ride.
You better believe the NCAA gonna find a way to go back and revise it all and incorporate that if my guess would be that there will be some degree of discussions that come up around the income bracket that comes from name, image, and likeness, right? So if they make X amount of dollars, then that cuts into scholarship money. You watch.
I mean, if that's the case, I think that's fine.
No, I believe it's fair too. I believe it's fair. I wanted to add a side note. So the rowing piece, you about to throw up. You ready? Said audience member, $70 million in scholarship money for rowing.
70 million?
70 million. Yep.
That's 70 million for rowing?
Look, that's what M means, right?
Jesus. Well, you know what?
College rowing scholarships, $70 million worth of scholarships.
I'm about to tell my wife our son's gonna be a rower. Yes. Our son's gonna be a rower. 70 million? Goodness gracious.
Yeah. It says they're difficult to earn. Yeah, I guess so. I
can only imagine there's probably only a handful of high schools in the country who do this.
So I'm going to tell you. So there are only approximately 90 NCAA Division I colleges and universities with rowing programs, and many of them have women's rowing scholarship money available too. So yeah.
And I'm pretty sure those 90 schools are your Ivy Leagues, your privates, your big generational schools.
Yeah. So the information on the rowing scholarship can be found at ncaasports.org. The additional information that I shared for the list can be found on I don't know where I got it from. I'll put it in the chat window so that folk can reference that information so that our listenings have it. Folks, we're out of time again. But you know what? It's been a great show. I love hosing folk in the face with all this information. Why? Because in order to make well-informed decisions, we need to be educated. And that's what HT Pregame is all about. So we want to wish you all a phenomenal remainder of your weekend. Happy Mother's Day tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Tomorrow. It's tomorrow. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers across the nation and around the globe. Children, take care of your mamas. Take care of your mama figures. Daddies. I ain't even gonna go there.
We're gonna talk about dads next month.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna talk about
we ain't gonna sit there and say, happy Mother's Day to all the fathers who got to be mothers. We're not gonna do that.
Real talk. There's so much drama going on out here. You don't got to like me, but you ought to be giving me my props because I'm a darn good mama to your child. But that's a whole nother show. Anywho, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. Tell Lady Ransom I said happy Mother's Day because you have to be a mother before you're a mother. So blessings to you all. And we will see you all right back here for HT Pregame. Ronnie, taking off on me again next week. But we'll be right back here next week. We love you all. See you next week.
Happy Mother's Day. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Peace.